Yo, what it do, YouTube? It's your boy Coach Shockwave back with another video, and we are here to talk about the post-game reaction between the Indianapolis Colts and the Los Angeles Rams, which went into overtime. This is 2 weeks in a row now, and the Colts fell short this time. They just couldn't pull off the miraculous comeback. They were down 20-0 at one point in the game, man. They were really just struggling at one point. And the game started off with just the Rams being the Rams. I mean, just look like a Rams that I predicted them to be because I mentioned how much of an offensive team they are because the defense kind of lacked. And you kind of seen that in the game as well moving forward. I'm not going to hold you guys here all day because it's not much to talk about because we know the reality of the game and how it went. It shouldn't have went that way. But before I get into it, I'd like to appreciate each and every one of you guys. Like, comment, subscribe, turn on your notice to know when I'm going live. Also, subscribe and turn on your notice to know when I'm dropping a video as well. I drop a bunch of content on here, YouTube shorts, videos, live streams, things of that nature. So if you want to stay tuned for that, I think the YouTube shorts are really funny. Stay tuned for that. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And comment your thoughts about the game below. Let's hop into it, right? So the game started off with, of course, the hot man, the guy on the hot streak right now, Puka Nacua, just ripping the Colts apart. The first play, it hit Puka Nacua's hands and he barely caught it. And at that point, I was like, you know what? It's going to be one of them days. Why did I say that? Because it's like no matter what coordinator we have, the middle of the field is always open. And both coordinators are almost like the same scheme. We had Gus Bradley. We got Gus Bradley, and back then we had Eberflus. It was almost the same thing. Soft coverages. It just continues to be an issue in Indianapolis. Why do they continue to do that, especially with a guy like Matthew Stafford? And when I mentioned Stafford loves those middle of those field passes, like he does those dink and dunks, and he'll shred you. You give him soft coverages, he'll look like Stafford, like prime Stafford pretty much. So when that happened, I was like, this is going to be one of those games. And I was watching it back, and it's just blown coverage after blown coverage. There was even one time on third down when it looked like the Colts were going to get a stop, and Tutu Atwell caught a beautiful pass, and Julius Brents tried to close in and get the swat, but the pass was just on the money. Once Stafford gets going, it's going to be hard to get him out of that zone. And the first half was just abysmal to watch. The Colts had a few plays when it was like, even though the score was 17-0, there was a few plays when I feel like, okay, the Colts can still win this game. Of course, there's moments when they're like, well, if the score is 17-0, there's a bunch of fans that's going to be like, you know what, this game's going to be nowhere close. The Colts lost already. But I never felt that way watching the game. I was like, the Colts still had a chance. The score wasn't 30-0. If the score was 30-0, I might have turned it off. But it was still 17-0. And I feel like the Colts could, have a second half comeback. As I said in the preview video, I said the Colts might start off rusty, but they're going to have a miraculous second half. And I figured that. I didn't expect the Rams to put up that many points. But again, I didn't expect the Colts to come out here in the soft coverages with a guy like Matthew Stafford and a head coach like Sean McVay, who pretty much knows this thing by heart. This is pretty much was a practice game for them because it was easy. It was layups, just automatic passes. Like Stafford was just in the zone. He was comfortable. He took his time. He just hit the targets. Higbee had a big play after big play. Atwell had big plays. Puka Nacua, of course, even in overtime, had multiple plays where he was just like finding himself. But the bright spot I seen, even through all the struggles, the run defense had a lot of good plays. Even though they had their touchdowns on the run, but there was multiple drives when it was like the Colts defense was there. They got gassed, of course, but when it came to like certain schemes, like certain plays, I think Zaire Franklin had a good game, of course. Shout out to Kenny Moore for the interception. Another praise for him because it looks like he's back to his natural self. There was a boneheaded play in the first quarter when it led to the first touchdown. Actually, the third down play when Stafford scrambled to try to run out of bounds and EJ Speed got the late hit. It was just so blatant. It was like, why did you do that? And then after that, the refs it felt like the refs were targeting the Colts. There was just flags after flags, and it was like it's going to be one of those games where the Colts, when they're beating themselves, when they're shooting themselves in the foot, and they're just not doing any favors because the refs not going to give them any slack moving forward after that first late hit. So I mean, it was pretty much a chess match at that point. It felt like it was a game where the Colts had to play the Rams and the referees, and they could never figure it out. But they did have a great second half, I would say. Even though they came up short with the loss, I feel like you can take a lot of positives out of this because you've seen the Anthony Richardson drive in the first quarter. I would say was impressive. Anthony Richardson in the first half, even with the fumble, I felt like he was in his own element. Of course, you had Aaron Donald and those boys, but Ogletree was doing great on run blocking, in my opinion. And I think even though with Aaron Donald getting the pressures on, Richardson and things of that nature, that first half, that first quarter, shown you a lot of potential what the Colts offense can be moving forward. They just got to be more consistent. There's a lot of passes where Richardson threw and they just dropped it. It was unfortunate, like there was one pass when he threw to Michael Pittman Jr. that was a little high. That was early in the first quarter. But there was like a lot of plays where you can see the consistency if they can just get a few fixes, a few fixtures in there, and not be so bland on offense. You can actually see how high paced and high tempo the offense can be moving forward. So I've seen a lot of potential in this game, even though we lost. So I can take a bright spot, and it's not like the Colts are 0-4. The Colts are 2-2, and the Rams are 2-2. It's week 4 going into week 5. It's still early, so of course you're not going to know the true identity of your team yet. You're starting to figure it out, and you're still taking off the training wheels. So it's still early in the season, and you're still trying to work out a few kinks. This is Anthony Richardson's first game back, and he looked pretty solid in my opinion. He really did. So other than that, I think Zach Moss, he started off a little rusty, but picked it up in the second half. Kylan Granson picked it up in the second half. Alec Pierce had a few moments. Josh Downs had a few moments. But I think the second half was really revealing for the Colts. I think the first 3 drives for the Colts in the beginning of the game was really promising as well. But they just had a stale session, but coming up because the defense was so gassed, man. The defense was gassed. It's like McVay and Stafford just knew what they were getting themselves into when they walked into this game, and Gus Bradley could just not figure it out. It's that simple. He wasn't sending the blitzes. I mean, it wasn't enough pressure on Stafford, even though he got sacked a few times. But it just wasn't enough pressure for Stafford to be rattled. He was too comfortable. But they started to pick up in the second half. Samson, DeForest, all those guys, they started to step up in the second half, and then they led the comeback, which forced overtime. But like I said, in overtime, it was just bad. It was just bad. Like, we continued to run the same thing, and they just knew that they were going to win the game. I really felt like the Rams were confident enough to know they were going to win the game once they won the coin toss. They just knew, and Gus Bradley didn't switch it up. He didn't switch it up in my eyes. So I mean, that was just pretty much playing with chess. It was just a chess game at that point when you don't switch up your coverage, when everything's identical, and then you leave a guy like Puka Nacua who's on a hot streak to end the game. It's just unfortunate. It really is. I mean, I feel like the Colts definitely, they fought, and that's things you love to see. It's just unfortunate it came down to that ending. But definitely love how the offense clicked towards the end of the game, man. I really did. Alec Pierce, he stepped up big time. And and Anthony Richardson was just confident, even after the fumble. I just love how composed he is after his mistakes. Of course, he was frustrated after the game. You've seen that, but you love to see how do you fight back in the middle of the game, and how do you stay composed? How do you stay locked in? And that's what you love to see. And this team is very young. This team is very young. It's going to make mistakes. Of course, you don't expect those mistakes from like guys like EJ Speed and of that nature. But it's a young team. They're going to make mistakes. It's mostly how you're going to fight back from this. And the fact that you put up this dogfight with the Rams, with a team that in a game that looked like you almost lost, it shows you that you can go into next week with a little bit of confidence and go. And you're getting players back next week. We don't know the certainty of Jonathan Taylor if he's going to play or not, even though he comes back week 5. So we got a lot to look forward to moving forward. Of course, we can take this loss on the chin. We just started off rusty, but we picked it up in the second half. Hopefully next week it won't be the same thing. It was a positive sign to see Anthony Richardson finally sliding, but it really looked good. It looked like a really good second half. We just started off rusty in the first half. We had too many soft coverages, and hopefully next week we can send a little bit more blitzes, a little bit more pressure, and we start to figure it out a little bit early, sooner than later, basically. So you guys let me know your thoughts in the comment section about the game. How do you feel? Who upset you the most, and who stood out to you as well in the comment section? Let me know all these things. This is Marcus, and until next time, you've been Culture Shock.